I finally worked out how to work the Hauptwerk mixer. Don't tell anyone, it's a secret. Nobody seems to know how it works. Well, that's not entirely true, but we're going to walk through 4 very straightforward and welcoming doors. And once we've been through each of those 4 doors, you'll be able to use the Hauptwerk mixer without any issue. This is the basics of the Hauptwerk mixer. For the purpose of this video, we're going to use the organ of St Anne's Church in Moseley. A, because everyone's got it, and B, it's only in stereo. So in the next video, we'll actually create a rear channel. We'll give it some surround and make it sound pretty good, or better than it is. So on the screen right now, we've actually got one of the alternative configurations of Hauptwerk, which means it's completely, nothing is set up in it at all. And it just reminds me of the first time I loaded up Hauptwerk. I had no idea what the heck to do. And there are 2 different angles from which you can tackle the audio mixer. So on one end, you have the ranks or the pipes, the individual sounds. And on the other end, you have the speakers in your room. The journey from A to B is what we need to work out today. What we're going to do is actually start at B and work your way back through to A. Cold. There was also something in that. So what I'm going to ask you to do first is load up the mini control panel called Floating Control Panels 1. This is only available in Hauptwerk 7. However, if you don't have a Hauptwerk 7, if you've got 6 or 5, it doesn't matter. We're actually going to use audio routing voicing menu here, which you can also find in large floating control panels, and choosing this option here. So this is actually where we start that reverse journey from the speakers all the way through to the ranks. And that journey will take only 4 steps. 4 buttons on the screen here: audio device and channels, mixer, reverb, mixer bus groups, rank routing. Those 4 buttons are all we need today. On this pop-up menu, you can see that the bottom 3 buttons are under the label General, and the top 3 are under the label Organ. If you consider the general settings to be the Hauptwerk settings and the organ settings to be the sample set settings, the reason we're starting at the speaker side, which is audio device and channels, it's because we're setting up Hauptwerk first. We'll get Hauptwerk ready, and then we can slot the organ sample into Hauptwerk. So let's go ahead and open up our first menu, audio device and channels. This is where we actually set up our audio interface. Without this, basically there is no sound. So as you can see, mine's already been pre-selected. ISO, Motu Pro Audio, that's my audio interface right there. Now these device channels here will differ depending on what audio interface you are using. Actually, you've probably noticed that they already have front far left, front far right, front floor left, front floor right. That's simply because in my Motu settings, my audio interface settings, and I've labelled them all so I know which one does what. And if you can do that in your own interface, I would recommend doing that because it makes the setting up process later on a bit more straightforward. So back in Hauptwerk, I don't need to do anything here because my interface is already selected. Okay, so that's the first door closed now. Easy, right? We're now going to go through the second door, which is a little bit more involved, but don't worry, with me holding your hand, you've got nothing to worry about. That's what I tell Hugo every day. Let's go through the second door, mixer reverb. This is one of those sort of screens that when you first look at it, you think, no, I'm closing that, I'm not going in there again. So what's going on the left here, if I minimize that or collapse that, Hauptwerk 7 has 128 different mixer presets, and you can now very easily navigate to any of them by collapsing a menu like that. In a previous version, you had to scroll for hours and hours and hours all the way down to the bottom to get to your mixer preset. For this video, we will be using the mixer preset 1. Make sure that you configure the mixer preset to either an empty one or one that you know that you're happy to use. And always use that one, that mixer preset, for this organ, for St Anne's Moseley. These labels here have been all labelled by Hauptwerk themselves, and we can actually call them anything we want. Over on the right, these buttons up top here are basically duplicating these buttons on here, which causes a bit of confusion. Needless. Below that you have the option to add a reverb to your perspective, which we'll do in our next video. And below that, which we will be using today, this is where we actually route our perspective to a speaker or a channel. So first thing I'm going to ask you to do, because I personally find these labels very confusing, too much text. It's, to be honest, too many words there, just too many words. So I'm going to just remove them. So you can select them all and then just remove by doing that. I don't know why those keep doing that, but just. Okay, so nice and clean on the left-hand side now. So in these primary labels here, we're going to call these the different perspectives in the room. So I'm going to have 3 different perspectives in here today. I'm going to have a front close, front far, and I'm going to have a front floor. So let's put in front far in front close in primary 1, and let's select. Now this is where this will depend on your own setup. This will reflect what we saw through the first door. These are the channels or the speakers connected to your audio interface. So my speakers above my head here are connected to speakers 5 and 6 front close. I'm going to go ahead and label primary 2 to front far. And those speakers in the corner of the room up there are speakers 1 and 2. Primary 3, I'm going to call front floor, and those are speakers 3 and 4. Those are the ones down there, the big beefy Def-Tech speakers, which are good for all of the bass and make the floor shake. Now those 3 perspectives talk directly to the speakers. For now, let's come out of our second room, close the second door, and go into the third room, mixer bus groups. It's easy so far, isn't it? Actually, it's not that complicated. Okay, right. So now we're actually getting nearer to the organs, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, there's still a gap between where we are now and the pipes. We're going to wake them up in a minute. So again, these have been arbitrarily renamed by Hauptwerk, so I'm just going to get rid of all of that nonsense in there. Delete. It always leaves one. Why does it do that? It's so annoying. Okay, so now let's think about the organ itself. So we're in St Anne's Church in Moseley. 3 divisions: grate, swell, and pedal. So let's start by naming this top one here swell, number 2 grate, number 3 pedal. Now why we're doing this is because imagine this menu as the postman. The organ needs to know where to deliver its sound, its ranks, to the individual sort of houses or speakers, if you like. So this is very straightforward. So swell, I want to come out of the front speakers right above my head, which we labelled front close. Grate, I want to come out of the ones in the corners, so that's front far, it's already miraculously guessed. And pedal, yeah, it's already done it, so front floor. And then any buzzers below, I tend to just remove, double click, remove any hint of anything being selected, I just remove it. There's something in my mind which says that the computer is having to needlessly funnel audio into empty perspectives, which might cause a little bit of CPU usage. It's worth just being careful about that sort of thing. We can now come out of this room and close this door behind us. I'm now going to go into the fourth room, which is the first time we're going onto the organ side. So we're going to the top half of this menu now to click what is it? Rank routing, that's it. Oh, English, guys, is not my tool, which is worrying, given that this is my full-time job. So, now our postman from room number 3 is going to talk to the organ. So, let's start with the pedal. There are only 4 pedal stops, which I'm quite surprised about there. So let's select all of the pedal stops and go to Destination Mixer Bus Group. Now, in here, you'll see something quite familiar, I hope. If it's worked, you should see, there we are, our 3 divisions. So we can choose pedal, they're all going to go to the pedal. The grate are all going to go, yes, you've guessed it, to the grate. The swell to the swell. Now, it's pretty cool that St Anne's Moseley actually also has the noises separately. So what we can actually do there is if we come out, and let's just take a step back into room number 3, the mixer bus groups, and create another group called noises. And I'm going to have my noises coming through. If you imagine sitting at an organ console, the noises are pretty much right in front of you, aren't they? Because the blowers are often right there. So I'm going to have my noises coming out of the speakers right above my head, essentially the same place as where the swell comes as well. So front close. Now if you look over on the right, currently in groups 001, 004, 0001, 0004. That's because over on the left you can see you got 0001 for swell and 0004 for noises. Okay, so all of the noises now, if we go back into room number 1, we can then direct those noises to our newly created perspective. Cool. What I then also do is do a Control A on all of the ranks on the left and make sure that these different perspectives down here are all empty. Click OK. Now that is essentially the basics of the audio mixer. Now for the lucky people amongst you who have, a subwoofer, we can add a subwoofer because we're very lucky in here to have a subwoofer, but nothing's going to it, and she's looking very, very lonely down there, and she wants to join the party, the St Anne's Moseley party. Let's go into our second door, so Mixer Reverb, and at the top under Master Mix, I'm going to create one called Subwoofer. 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 Now why am I creating it up there? It's because we want to have different perspectives going into it. They're called master because they sit at the top. Everything feeds into them. So a subwoofer, basically you want the 16 feet stops and any 32 stops to go into them. On this organ, obviously there are no 32s, but there are a number of 16s on the pedal and swell. So I want all 3 divisions to actually be fed into the subwoofer as well as the individual speakers. So I'm going to choose 13 and 14, which both go into my subwoofer. And then I'm going to choose the 3 primaries, so the 3 perspectives, and quite simply click the subwoofer option in the Sends menu down here. Please remember that anything you put in these master mixers will appear in this section here, and you'll need to make sure that you select that new master mix in this menu here for the audio to be sent to it, otherwise you won't hear any audio at all. Now only I will be able to tell if this has worked or not. Yes, I can now start to feel that through the bench and feel it in my chest, because that subwoofer is very effective. And I challenge you to find me an organist who does not like bass. Bass is the best bit. You have to feel it through the bench and through our bones. If we just take a moment to take maybe a step out of the basics and more into the intermediate sort of stuff, it actually is still basics. But you might not have thought about doing this. And this is what I do in this room. These floor standing speakers are fantastic for all frequencies, but particularly I would say for the bass and the mid. I have like ultra low bass coming through the subwoofer, and then sort of like a refined middle bass coming through the floor standing speakers. These Adam Audio speakers up here are fantastic for mid and then the upper end. The mixtures sound really good through these speakers. So I'm actually quite fortunate to have speakers in the room that serve different uses. So bearing that in mind, why don't we route the 16-foot swell and grate stops to the floor standing speakers? This is very straightforward. Let's go into our second door, so mixer bus groups, and create a new perspective called, let's just call it simply 16-foot ranks. And we want that to go to our front floor standing speakers. Go back into room number 1, rank routing, and then go choose the manual 16-foot stops. I'm not going to choose a swelled reed actually, I'm going to leave that with the other reeds. So it's actually the only stop is the swell, isn't it? So let's now go to the swell lead lick board and choose the perspective as 16-foot ranks, and just make sure once again, because this is important, because I've just created another group, you'll need to now make sure that other ranks are not unintentionally being routed to it. So always check in this perspective 2 menu that they are all blank, all right? So now the swell 16-foot lead lift board and will come out of my speakers down here. Ooh. Why on earth is it playing full swell? Oh, St. Anne's Moseley, what are you doing to me? Oh, I've got that button on there. There we go. Oh, yes. Now, the great thing about having those individual perspectives configured in this way is that if we go back to mixer and reverb, if I want, I can turn these speakers down. If I found that these speakers next to me here, the floor standing speakers are too loud, just quite simply adjust the levels over on the right here. Or, as this speaker here is just a fraction closer to me than the one over there, I could actually just give the bias, the stereo bias, a little bit of adjusting to make this one just a bit quieter and the one over there a bit louder. If you want to record your performances on Hauptwerk, there are 2 ways you can do that. You can either record from all 3 of these perspectives by clicking Records Audio here, meaning that when you click record, you will have 3 different output files. Or what you could do, if you disable that so that now won't record, you could choose Master Mix 1, type in recording. You don't need to have output channels here because we're not outputting the sound, we just want to record it. Records audio, and then from the input of this device. Now I always choose from the input of this device simply because if I want to add any fancy pants reverb or play around with any of the settings in here in the bus audio processing, that will include it in the recording. I don't want it to, because I do that all of my post-production in Cubase, so I want my output to be raw and unprocessed. And then what you will need to do is choose all of these three perspectives, and then send the audio up to recording. There we go. So all of those three perspectives now are being sent to recording. What I've done there is I've shown you the absolute basics of the audio mixer and shown you how easy it is to set up. In the next video, what we will do is create a fake surround perspective. So I have two speakers behind me over there which are currently looking very sad because they're not doing anything. Those speakers for me are the ambience, and I must admit occasionally there are some sample sets where I actually bring the built-in or the recorded rear channels to the front, because I sometimes don't think the rear ones provide me with enough immersion and a real atmosphere. So I'll show you how to do that in the next video. Hope that was useful for you guys. If you have found this useful, please leave me a comment. And look, if you haven't found it useful, please leave me a comment and I will do my best to make my next one for you useful. Either way, please click that like button, that's so important. And of course, subscribe. I'm sure most of you have already. If you haven't, why on earth not? Please click that subscribe button. That's easy for me to say. Until the next video, I will say cheerio. Goodbye everyone, take care and stay safe. Goodbye.